Chapter 554. Teacher, I'm also a first-stage martial artist. Why can she participate, but I can't? Nianyan's clear questioning voice suddenly sounded in the classroom. The teacher's face slightly changed on the spot. This child, how could she be so disobedient? The reason why the teacher didn't allow Nianyan to participate in the martial arts tournament was out of good intentions. He didn't think that this little girl would act like she ate the wrong medicine today, insisting on standing up to make him unable to back down. I'll say it again, this martial arts tournament is held between the same grade. You're already in the 6th grade, so your opponents are at least 2 or 3 years older than you. Are you sure you want to participate? The teacher's face was a bit ugly. But because of Nianyan's usual performance, the teacher didn't care about her contradicting behavior, and once again emphasized that the cruelty of the martial arts tournament. He tried to persuade Nianyan to give up this inexplicable idea. After all, children can't be compared to adults. A 2 or 3 year age gap will directly cause the two sides to never be on the same level. Professional boxing matches are divided into lightweight and heavyweight weight, but this martial arts tournament, because of the lack of experience, did not pay attention to the details. As long as Nianyan signed up for the tournament, it means that she may meet Zhao Yu, who is taller than her, heavier than her, and even have longer arms and legs than her. Isn't this just looking for abuse? The teacher really didn't want Nianyan to participate, but this time Nianyan was like a tortoise that ate a scale, determined to participate in the tournament. Teacher, I'm sure. Hearing Nianyan's resolute answer, the teacher frowned and thought for a while, then finally agreed to her request. Okay, then I'll count you in. The teacher thought that Nianyan really had the strength of a first-stage martial artist. But in fact, Nianyan didn't even go to a martial arts training class. Where can she find a martial artist qualification certificate? This little girl lied. She learned how to lie. And the reason why Nianyan did this, on one hand, was because she really wanted to participate. On the other hand, it was entirely because of Zhao Yu. Just like how Zhao Yu was unhappy with her, Nianyan had been unhappy with Zhao Yu for a long time. In Nianyan's eyes, Li Tangyue was a kind and pitiful girl. She was just a little fatter. Did she get in anyone's way? Why did she have to be bullied every day? Although the whole class was ostracizing Li Tangyue, after Nianyan's observation during this period of time, she found that there were only a few people who were taking the lead. One of them was Zhao Yu. What was even more infuriating was that Zhao Yu's bullying methods were much better than Skinny Monkey's. At most, Skinny Monkey would take the lead to kick up a fuss. He didn't really hate Li Tangyue. However, Zhao Yu didn't know what was going on. It was as if Li Tangyue's existence would lower her beauty, so she spent all day thinking of ways to target Li Tangyue. Even if she unintentionally passed by Li Tangyue, Zhao Yu would unintentionally leave behind 1 or 2 sarcastic words to hurt Li Tangyue's fragile heart. As the saying goes, hurtful words were like sharp knives. The person who said it was calm and indifferent, but the person who heard it was covered in cuts and bruises. In school, this kind of sharp-tongued girl was the most difficult to deal with. It was fine if she called out her name, but she didn't do that. There were a few times when Nianyan was on the verge of exploding, but in the end, she forced herself to hold it in. There was no other way. She really couldn't find anything that could be used against Zhao Yu, so she couldn't stand up for Li Tangyue. Looking at Li Tangyue's increasingly depressed mental state, Nianyan felt that she needed to properly vent her anger for her. Zhao Yu, Chen Nian, who else in our class is a first-stage warrior? Wang Xiaohu, you too. Okay, then the 3 of you will go together. Zhao Yu and Nianyan were both girls, so the teacher looked left and right. In the end, he chose the strongest boy among the children who raised their hands. After the class teacher submitted their class's contestants, the school quickly came up with a decent competition schedule. To be honest, the enthusiasm of the children was a bit out of the principal's expectations. He originally thought that there wouldn't be enough participants for this competition, but the result was completely different from what he imagined. If it weren't for the teachers who noticed that something was wrong and promptly asked the principal to limit the number of participants, the number of people who signed up would have increased by several times. Okay, all the teachers of each class have received the competition schedule, right? I now announce that the first martial arts competition of the capital-affiliated primary school officially begin. Referees, please take your positions. Following the principal's order, a dozen or so temporary martial arts instructors took on the role of referees for this martial arts competition. Because of their age, children under the 3rd grade didn't need to compete. They only needed to perform a complete set of Arhat fists, and the referees would score them based on their performance. The one with the highest score would be the champion. This kind of competition naturally wasn't worth watching. Therefore, when the 4th grade students went on stage, the atmosphere was instantly pushed to the peak. The school found a lot of gymnastics mats and neatly spread them on the field, suddenly turning the field into a huge open-air arena. The small players wore full protective suits and were eager to try. Under the leadership of the teachers in charge of their classes, they were madly cheering for them. From the Colosseum of Rome 2,000 years ago to the boxing ring now, fighting had always been the most exciting competition for the audience. Perhaps it was because of the atmosphere. These 8 or 9-year-old children showed a kind of fanatical ferocity as soon as they went on stage. As soon as the referee blew the whistle, the two sides would immediately pounce on each other and use their ancestral tortoise fists. After 2 or 3 moves, the two would hug each other and roll around on the mats. This was a fight between children. As for things like Arhat fists, moves, and so on, sorry, these all didn't exist. Anyway, everyone was wearing protective suits, and the fists didn't hurt, so there was only one way to determine the winner, and that was, either you press me to the ground and can't get up, or I press you to the ground and can't get up. It was supposed to be a martial arts competition, but in the blink of an eye, it turned into a wrestling competition. Looking at the child's red face and the adorable look of wanting to fall down, the teachers could finally put down their worried hearts. It turned out that they were overthinking. These children all had small arms and legs, so how could they perform any decent martial arts moves? If someone could perform a set of tortoise fists smoothly, they would probably be able to take home the championship trophy. Chapter 555. Although the Arhat fist could be considered a martial art with killing power, there were only a few people who could truly master it through a comprehensive study of its martial arts. In fact, this is the same as learning the piano. The piano was born in 1700 and has a history of more than 300 years. But until today, how many people in the world can play the piano, and how many people are proficient in the piano? Therefore, in just a few years, no matter how turbulent the momentum of the martial arts craze is, ordinary people without the guidance of a master and without the relevant experience can only put on a show at most. There are still too few people who can really rely on their talent and self-learning. And even adults can't use the true power of Arhat fist, let alone these children who are less than 10 years old. So, the capital-affiliated primary school's first martial arts competition turned into a farce. Looking at the children on the stage, the teachers couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. The children did try very hard. At least their starting positions were decent. But when it came to the real fight, their silly and cute appearance didn't make people feel threatened at all. It has to be said, the way they fight seriously is really too cute. In the end, the 4th grade's championship trophy was won by a little fatty relying on his physical advantage. As soon as the 4th grade's competition ended, it was the 5th grade's turn to go on stage. It can be seen that there is still a big difference between the 4th grade and the 5th grades. Especially when it comes to making moves, the 5th grade's children can already make a gorgeous combination of straight punches and leg sweeps. Although they still can't use the 3 sunflower style to catch the 8th grade's gorgeous combo, as the contestants get older and older, the level of excitement of the competition begins to rise. Until the first child with the title of first stage martial artist came on stage, the atmosphere was suddenly pushed to the highest point. What is the first stage martial artist's rating standard? That is to be able to make a complete set of Arhat fist in actual combat. It's not some tortoise fist, nor is it a random fight, but a real punch and kick, thoroughly using Arhat fist in actual combat. As the saying goes, 7 stars of Arhat, step by step ding ding. Moving left and rushing right, fast as the wind, left and right meteors rushing to the chest. Don't go up, don't go down. Hammer in the center, become 8 trigrams. 2 hands out of the chest, gods and ghosts don't dare to come. As more and more martial artists entered the stage, the children who were only fighting based on their primitive instincts were quickly defeated. The 5th grade competition was already quite valuable, so the teachers couldn't help but have more expectations for the 6th grade children. They only hoped to see an exciting battle between dragons and tigers. For this reason, the principal had even transferred 2 cameramen to record this year's martial arts competition in all aspects. She only hoped that the 6th grade children's performance would not disappoint her. The result was just as everyone expected. Because their minds were more mature, the 6th grade children's punches were naturally much smoother than those of the lower grades. Their moves were also more methodical. Finally, it was the turn of the contestants from Year 6 Class 2 to take the stage. Zhao Yu was in front of Nian, and her appearance brought the atmosphere to a climax. A girl. She was the first girl to go on stage. Moreover, Zhao Yu's figure was tall, and her chest was slightly bulging. Therefore, the moment she went on stage, the boy opposite her immediately blushed and didn't dare to look at her again. What needs to be mentioned here is, because of the intentions of the teachers of each class, there were basically no girls participating in this year's martial arts competition. The lack of participants also caused the competition to be unable to split into male and female groups, so Nian and Zhao Yu's opponents were both boys. Different from Nian's immaturity, Zhao Yu's body already had a bit of the unique charm of a young girl. Children nowadays matured early, and because of her wealthy family background, Zhao Yu secretly learned how to put on makeup a long time ago on the internet. Although her makeup skills were not very good, compared to a group of primary school students, she was still too dazzling. Therefore, when Zhao Yu went on stage, many of the brats in the audience seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, and shouted excitedly. Year 6 Class 1 Lu Hao, please advise. Year 6 Class 2 Zhao Yu, please advise. Under the guidance of the referee, the 2 children bowed to each other and introduced themselves, and Zhao Yu made the first move. Although the boy was also a Dan warrior, he seemed to adhere to the concept of a straight man who did not hit a woman. Even when Zhao Yu used a standard set of punches and kicks, he still did not have the slightest intention of fighting back. Seeing this, Zhao Yu was not surprised at all, and instead took advantage of the situation to attack fiercely. She suddenly bent down, and with a sweep of her leg, kicked the boy directly to the ground, then jumped up high, and at the same time, bent her elbow to fiercely punch the boy's chest with the tip of her elbow. Stop! When the referee felt that something was wrong, he sternly shouted to stop, but the boy was already lying on the ground holding his chest and groaning in pain. Although he was wearing protective gear, Zhao Yu's somersault punch still hurt him. Zhao Yu, victory! After confirming that the boy's injury was not serious, the referee announced the result of the competition. Then, under the admiring gaze of the crowd, Zhao Yu slowly walked down the stage. Obviously, Zhao Yu's fierce performance not only did not scare the audience, but it also refreshed everyone's understanding of their goddess. Goddess can only be admired from afar, but not touched. After Zhao Yu, it was Nian's turn to go on stage. If Zhao Yu was compared to a cold and arrogant goddess, then Nian was obviously the harmless little girl next door. Year 6 Class 1 Hao Jia, please enlighten me. Year 6 Class 2 Chen Nian, please enlighten me. Following Nian's self-introduction, there was a sudden burst of cheers from the audience. Class monitor, do your best. You're the best. Chen Nian, Chen Nian, Chen Nian. Nian looked back, and only then did she realize that the people cheering for her were the classes that she used to be in. For example, the former Year 1 Class 1, the current Year 3 Class 2, the former Year 3 Class 2, the current Year 5 Class 2. Although she was now the class monitor of Year 6 Class 2, these former classmates obviously did not forget the class monitor who shone like a comet. Nian skipped 2 grades, but who would have thought that she would become the most popular child in the school because of this? Humph. Seeing so many people cheering for Nian, Zhao Yu immediately snorted in anger. But soon, a strange smile appeared on her face. Didn't Chen Nian like to be in the limelight? Then let's see how she will embarrass herself on stage later. What a coincidence. Zhao Yu's boyfriend was the boy named Hao Jia in front of her. The two of them came from the same courtyard, and their family backgrounds were not comparable to ordinary people. Moreover, both of their parents had a good relationship, so the two of them naturally got together. Zhao Yu had mentioned Ninian to Hao Jia before, so she knew very well, Hao Jia would definitely stand up for her. Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 556. There were many spectators for today's martial arts competition. In addition to the entire school's teachers and students, as well as the temporarily hired cameraman, Xianxia also secretly came to the scene to watch the battle. After all, how could a broadcast be as exciting as watching a battle live? This was Ninian's first battle, so of course, Xianxia had to personally come to the scene to cheer for his daughter. Therefore, while the students were cheering for Ninian, Xianxia's figure appeared out of thin air on the roof of the teaching building next to the field. Meow, sensing Xianxia's arrival, Big Cat immediately jumped down from the treetop. Then, as if possessed by Spider-Man, it ran perpendicularly along the wall to the roof. After arriving at the roof, Big Cat jumped onto Xianxia's shoulder. Then, like before, it licked its paws and then laid on Xianxia's shoulder to take a nap. It seemed that it really couldn't arouse the slightest bit of interest in the jostling between children. Hey, did Ninian grow taller again? Xianxia casually stroked Big Cat's smooth and soft fur. Only then did he realize that Ninian seemed to have grown taller again. Even among the sixth graders, she wasn't considered short. This child, will she grow taller than her father in the future? While Xianxia was busy studying his daughter's height problem, Ninian welcomed the first battle of her life. Speaking of which, her opponent was not a cat or a dog. Instead, it was a well-known figure. If Nian's reputation came mostly from her outstanding performance, then Hao Jia's was the exact opposite, because his reputation came mostly from the misdeeds he committed in his daily life. This was a troublesome brat, or you could also call him, delinquent. Hao Jia started school late and had just turned 12 years old, but he had already learned the ways of society from who knows where. When other people were still addicted to Mobile Legends, this kid was already smoking, drinking, and dating. He really won at the starting line of life. However, being rebellious was being rebellious. In the end, Hao Jia was only a 12-year-old boy, so his relationship with Zhao Yu was more like a special relationship of mutual recognition and cooperation. Both of them hoped to use this opportunity to show their uniqueness and arouse the envy and admiration of their classmates. This would satisfy their desire to win. The moment Hao Jia heard the name, Chen Nian, he remembered what Zhao Yu once said to him. Although in Hao Jia's eyes, Nian was obviously a little girl. But as Zhao Yu's boyfriend, Hao Jia felt obligated to stand up for his girlfriend. Therefore, after he went on stage, he gave Nian a fierce middle finger. Obviously, this action was done specifically for Zhao Yu to show his determination. In addition, Hao Jia also wanted to use this opportunity to scare Nian. It would be best if Nian lowered her head and admitted defeat. This way, he wouldn't be criticized for bullying girls, and at the same time, he could get back his girlfriend's dignity. Compared to Hao Jia's fierceness, Nian's reaction was a little cute. Although she didn't understand why Hao Jia was so hostile to her, she knew what it meant to give her the middle finger. Therefore, Nian pouted unhappily. Match start. The referee didn't notice Hao Jia's little action. When he saw that the two young contestants were in position, he blew the whistle. The match started. In front of the entire school, Hao Jia still had some restraint. Therefore, he didn't immediately rush towards Nian. Instead, he stood on the spot and waved at Nian. Seeing this, Nian didn't hold back. She only heard a, yeah, to boost her courage, and then stupidly rushed towards Hao Jia. Here's what needs to be mentioned: for safety reasons, the school forced every child to wear boxing gloves. Nian had always been practicing palm techniques, so when she got close to Hao Jia, she stupidly used her fist instead of her palm, and directly threw a punch towards Hao Jia's face. Aya! This silly child. Didn't you see that he was already in a blocking stance? She actually went to feed others moves like this? As the most discerning spectator, Xianxia sat on the rooftop, stroking Big Cat while commenting on Nianyan's moves. Sure enough. Before Xianxia finished, Hao Jia raised his left arm to block Nianyan's fist. At the same time, he swung his right fist and punched towards Nianyan's lower abdomen. This move was the fourth style of Arhat fist, clear the clouds and see the sun. Because she was wearing protective clothing, Nianyan didn't suffer any damage from Hao Jia's punch, but the judges on the platform all took out pens to record it. Like all sports, the judges would give points based on the child's performance, and the one with the higher score would win. Because Nianyan could still stand, the judge didn't immediately blow the whistle, but instead signaled for both sides to continue the competition. Hao Jia seemed to have some experience in martial arts competitions. Therefore, before Nianyan could recover, he immediately withdrew his fist, and then kicked the outside of Nianyan's calf. This was good. Even though she was wearing protective gear, Nianyan still fell to the mat because of her unstable center of gravity. Whoosh! After the sharp whistle sounded, Hao Jia immediately stopped and took 3 steps back. He had successfully knocked down his opponent. According to the referee's scoring rules, this kick should be worth 3 points, right? Qin Nian, can you still stand? Do you want to admit defeat? The judge quickly stepped forward to help Nianyan up, and at the same time asked with concern. She was a child, after all, it was normal for her to admit defeat. However, when Nianyan heard the judge's question, she immediately pouted and replied unhappily, "No. I can stand up, I didn't lose." After saying that, the little girl seemed to have eaten gunpowder. She immediately got up from the ground and got into a fighting stance again. "Okay, then be careful, don't get hurt." The judge gestured for both of them to stand properly, ready to start the competition again. But at this time, Nianyan suddenly did something unexpected. She quickly put the glove on her mouth and took it off in a few moves. "What are you doing? Put the gloves on." The judge noticed Nianyan's actions and immediately scolded her. Hearing this, not only did Nianyan not listen to the judge's request, but she also deliberately threw the gloves out of the ring, retorting at the same time, "No. I don't know the Arhat fist, Dad taught me palm techniques, I can't use palm techniques with the gloves on." Palm techniques? The judge was also a martial artist. After hearing what the little girl said, he immediately looked at the main stage hesitantly. This was a rule set by the school, wearing gloves was to prevent the child from getting hurt. But, martial arts and boxing were different after all. Martial arts not only consisted of fist techniques, but also finger techniques and palm techniques, so wearing gloves was equivalent to wearing shackles. On the main stage. After the judge's explanation, the principal finally understood the crux of the matter, so he nodded to the audience and readily agreed to the little girl's request not to wear gloves. The principal wanted to see what was so special about this little girl's palm techniques. "Okay, let the competition begin again, listen to my whistle, 1, 2, 3, whoosh." Chapter 557. Why didn't Xianxia directly teach Nianyan's sword techniques and immortal methods, but let her start from practicing martial arts like an ordinary person? That was because Xianxia didn't want Nianyan to become too different. Perhaps many people couldn't understand this point of view, but as long as you put yourself in his shoes, it was actually very easy to understand. Humans were social creatures. Xianxia was no exception, and Nianyan was no exception. If a person didn't have friends, then how lonely would she be? That kind of loneliness that always lingered in one's heart could sometimes actually kill a person. Like other children, Nianyan also had many friends. Xiaoyu grew up in the same courtyard, the twin brothers grew up on the same street, and then Li Sanduo and Li Tangyue, who were in the same class. Xianxia was old. Nianyan was still very young. Her friends would only increase. However, how many of her friends could keep up with her fast pace? They were clearly good friends who grew up together. In the blink of an eye, Nianyan, with the halo of a genius, jumped one level after another in school. Nianyan was already in the 6th grade. The two brothers who were once close to her were now still in the 3rd grade. This change was not obvious at first, but as Nian gradually adapted to the life of the 6th grade and began to try to integrate into this new environment, it was destined that she had to say goodbye to her yesterday. The once close relationship was now gradually drifting apart. It was not because someone had changed again. It was because everyone had grown up again. Compared to the long life of an immortal cultivator, the ignorant childhood was too short and precious. She didn't want to deprive Nian of her childhood with the inherent concept of cultivating as early as possible, because this would only lead to the loss of a child's childhood. Thinking about it carefully, wasn't Qin Shueqing a typical case of childhood loss? Sister. Come on. Beat him down. In the crowd, the two brothers didn't care about the strange gazes of the surrounding students at all and cheered for Nian at the top of their lungs. The two of them had already shouted loudly enough. However, Nian was so focused that she didn't hear the two brothers' shouts at all. This was the first time she had fought with someone. It was obviously impossible to say that she wasn't nervous in her heart. Therefore, after taking off the gloves on her hands, Nian immediately followed Qin Shi's usual teachings and directly assumed the posture of an elbow wrap. What was cloud hand? In ancient scrolls often used a spiral shape to represent the rotation of clouds in the wind. There was also a very elegant combination of hand in the classic dance. This set of skills was a combination of painting and dance moves, so it was named Cloud Hand. What needed to be mentioned here was, martial arts was divided into external style and SS external styles focused arts. Hand there was no superiority and inferiority. S's masters to master, and this was what the older generation often said, train the muscles, bones, and skin externally, and train the breath internally. Most of the Arhat fists moves were fierce and forceful. It was the standard external style, so Hao Jie's attack looked fierce. As the saying goes, once an expert makes a move, the truth will be known. Nian had just assumed hers fighting stance, and the referee's interest was immediately piqued. Looking at her stance, this kid seemed to have some skill. Just now, because the gloves were too much of a hindrance, Nian was defeated by Hao Jie the moment she came up, so she naturally felt a little unconvinced. That round didn't count. Start over. Fighting with a little girl already made Hao Jie feel a little embarrassed. But after the opponent fell, she still put on an unconvinced look, which made Hao Jie feel a little annoyed. Kids at this age were the most prideful. Unconvinced? Then I'll beat you until you're convinced. Hence, the moment the referee's whistle sounded, Hao Jie seemed to have eaten gunpowder, and rushed towards Nian. Maybe he wanted to use this to establish his dominance, so Hao Jie didn't use his Arhat fist this time, but took out his famous ultimate move, flying kick. Hao Jie. Seeing Hao Jie jump high and kick towards Nian, the teachers couldn't sit still. With this kick, wouldn't Nian be sent flying out of the arena? The principal was still watching from above. How could this kid not know his limits? From the moment Hao Jie sped up and jumped to the moment the teachers shouted to stop, everything happened in the blink of an eye. But just when everyone thought that Nian would be sent flying by Hao Jie's kick, an unexpected scene suddenly happened. In actual fact, if her reaction was fast enough, Nian could totally avoid Hao Jie's flashy flying kick. But, instead of dodging, she immediately bent her knees and got into a horse stance, then swung her arms like willow branches by the river. It looked messy, but it actually had a deeper meaning. As expected. Just when Hao Jie's right leg was about to hit Nian suddenly hugged his right leg, then borrowed the force from Hao Jie's leg to spin in a circle, then threw Hao Jie out of the arena. "I-oh. Get up. You're crushing my leg." Perhaps it was because Hao Jie used too much force, but after his body fell onto the mat, he rolled a few times on the mat. He only stopped when he hit the audience on the side. Shio. Hao Jie has gone out of bounds. Chen Nian wins. After the sharp whistle sounded, the referee announced the result of this round's competition. No one would have thought that Hao Jie would lose in such a way. The teachers didn't understand the twists and turns, and only thought that Hao Jie accidentally flew out of the arena because he wanted to look cool. But the referee at the side understood the crux of the matter, so he directly declared Chen Nian the winner. How was this a mistake? In the face of Hao Jie's flying kick, not only did Chen Nian not dodge, he even seized the opportunity at the crucial moment of his opponent's mistake. Taking advantage of the situation, he used Hao Jie's strength to successfully turn it into his own and threw Hao Jie out of the ring. This was a competition, not a duel. It was based on the performance of both parties. Nian got 1 point for not panicking in the face of danger, 1 point for not dodging, and 1 point for the correct response. But Hao Jie? Not only did he fail to show off, he even fell out of bounds. This kind of performance was basically enough to get a negative score. This was the referee's evaluation criteria. Just based on this move alone, Chen Nian deserved to win. This was a martial arts competition, so naturally, one couldn't just compete with brute force, but also with brains. Flying kick in the air? The move was cool, but could it hit someone? The referee had his own evaluation criteria, so after announcing this round's result, he immediately signaled for the next round's contestants to take their places. Although the teachers didn't understand the strength of the move, after hearing the referee's judgment, they still led the crowd in cheering for Nian. They really didn't expect this. This little girl could actually win against Hao Jie. Everyone was congratulating Nian. But at this moment, a very discordant voice suddenly sounded. This isn't fair. There's a conspiracy. The referee blew a black whistle. I don't accept this. Chapter 558. Black Whistle. Upon hearing this, even Nian could not help but turn around to take a look. Wasn't it Hao Jie who was making a ruckus? Looking at how lively and energetic he was, it was no wonder that he would be so indignant. As the leader of the 6th grade Class 1, as well as a famous person in school, Hao Jie's words were immediately echoed by many students below the stage. Unfair. Hao Jie did not lose. The referee blew the black whistle. Fight again. That's right, let's fight again. As the members of the 6th grade Class 1 stood up to support Hao Jie, the audience's stance changed. That's right, Hao Jie only accidentally rolled off the stage. Why did the referee decide that he had lost? Was there really a conspiracy? Some of the more cowardly children did not dare to stand up and question the referee, but they still hid in the crowd and booed. Seeing that the situation was getting out of hand, the referee in charge of this competition was immediately angered. Xiao! He whistled fiercely and quickly walked to the center of the stage. Looking at the audience below the stage, he scolded sternly, as a martial artist, how could we do such dirty things behind the scenes? In this round of competition, Hao Jie has clearly made 3 big mistakes. First, he underestimated his opponent. Second, he was too arrogant. Third, he did not withdraw his move in time to remedy the situation, and after making a mistake, he still insisted on doing it his way. If this was not a competition, but a life and death duel, then I can tell you with absolute certainty, Hao Jie, he would be a dead man now. In a battle between experts, victory or defeat was determined by a single move. If it were any other child, the referee might not have been so harsh. But Hao Jie was different. He was a first-stage martial artist with a martial artist certification, but now he had made such a serious mistake in a real battle. And this was something that the referee could not tolerate. After all, martial arts were not child's play. Being strict with children was truly for their own good. Even though Hao Jie did not understand these principles, but after seeing the referee fly into a rage in front of everyone and displaying the unique aura of a martial artist, this kid was like an eggplant that had been hit by frost, wilted. If you can't afford to offend the referee, then you can only blame yourself for being unlucky. Hao Jie returned to the area where his class was located unhappily. Next door was Year 6 Class 2. Hearing the laughter from the class next door, Hao Jie immediately became angry. What happened? Was he so proud of winning by a fluke? If you have the guts, don't leave after school. Otherwise, I'll definitely beat the crap out of you. Hao Jie was used to riding roughshod over others, so when he saw the skinny monkey's smug look, he immediately grabbed the mineral water beside him and threw it over with all his might. The mineral water bottle hit the skinny monkey's leg, and the skinny monkey immediately stood up angrily. Who threw it? But when he found out that it was Hao Jia who had hit him, he was terrified on the spot. He immediately pretended that nothing had happened and sat back down silently. After scaring the skinny monkey, Hao Jia's mood seemed to have improved a lot. Therefore, he immediately took out his phone and sent a message to Zhao Yu. "Baby, I'm sorry." Zhao Yu was sitting not far away. After seeing the message, she did not reply immediately. Instead, she turned her head and glared at Hao Jia fiercely. It was obvious that Zhao Yu was angry. Since her boyfriend was so useless, she had to do it herself. She only hoped that Chen Nian would not be eliminated so quickly. The competition continued. After Zhao Yu and Nian Nian defeated their respective opponents, the final battle officially began in the first martial arts competition of the capital-affiliated primary school. The cold Zhao Yu versus the cute Chen Nian. No one would have thought that the champion would be between these two girls. Therefore, the moment the two girls appeared on the stage, there was an earth-shattering cheer from the audience. In this round, Chen Nian from Year 6 Class 2 will face Zhao Yu from Year 6 Class 2. Now, I announce, the competition officially begins. Looking at the children on the stage, the form teacher of Year 6 Class 2 was so happy that she could not close her mouth. In short, no matter who won this competition, the first and second place would be on the heads of Year 6 Class 2. Therefore, before the two girls started fighting, the form teacher quickly walked to the side of the stage and whispered a few words to them, basically telling them to just do whatever they wanted. After all, they were all on the same side. It did not matter who won first place, right? It had to be said that the form teacher was taking things for granted. Xiao. Hearing the referee's whistle, Zhao Yu seemed to have transformed into a different person. With a cold face, she charged straight at Nian Nian. Zhao Yu was half a head taller than Nian Nian, so when she started fighting, her whole body emitted an extremely oppressive aura. Hey! Although the little girl looked delicate, she seemed to be even more vicious than Hao Jia when it came to fighting. In fact, before she went on stage, Zhao Yu had already made up her mind. Today, in front of everyone, she must teach this annoying girl a lesson. With Hao Jia as an example, there was no way Zhao Yu would give Nian Nian another chance. Hence, she immediately used her best move, Vajra subduing the tiger. Seeing this, Nian Nian remained calm. She immediately faced the direction of Zhao Yu's attack and raised her hand to meet it. The Arhat fist was characterized by its straightforwardness and ferocity. The Qin Shiyun hand was characterized by its erratic movements and restraint. If one were to talk about the strength of the technique, of course, Qin Clan Yin hand would have the upper hand. However, martial arts were like knives that killed people. A martial arts expert could easily kill hundreds of people with a kitchen knife. A 3-year-old with a dragon-slaying knife might not be able to defeat anyone. The key was to see who was using the knife. Nian Nian had been learning the Qin Shiyun hand for quite some time, but compared to Zhao Yu, there was a clear difference. Therefore, when Nian Nian raised her hand to block Zhao Yu's Vajra subduing tiger, Zhao Yu immediately used her rich combat experience to change her move and used the Sea Descending Dragon. The so-called Sea Descending Dragon was to take a big step forward to suppress the opponent. At the same time, raise your right fist and smash the opponent's head. When had the audience on stage seen such a vicious move? Therefore, the moment Zhao Yu used this move, there was a burst of exclamations from below the stage. It had to be said that Nian Nian's combat experience was too lacking. Therefore, she did not realize, Vajra Tiger subduing Vajra was just a feint. Dragon subduing Sea was Zhao Yu's real killer move. Seeing that the opponent's fist was about to hit her head, she realized that it was too late to change her move. What should she do? She was going to be beaten. Her father did not teach her how to deal with this move. At such a critical moment, Nian Nian had an idea. She stuck out her butt, bent her legs, and suddenly sat on the ground. Only then did she manage to avoid Zhao Yu's fatal punch. Aya, why are you so fierce? Mobile version of the fastest update website, M. Chapter 559. Aya, why are you so fierce? Zhao Yu wasn't the one who said that. Instead, it was Nian who was sitting on the ground. Her current actions were akin to someone who was suddenly pulled out of her seat during class. She took the opportunity to sit down on the ground, barely dodging Zhao Yu's heavy punch. They were classmates, but Zhao Yu was so fierce and decisive. She really didn't treat Nian as one of her own. At that moment, even the audience couldn't help but sweat for Nian. Luckily, Nian was quick-witted enough to defuse this move. Otherwise, if Nian were to take the full brunt of Zhao Yu's punch, even if she was wearing a protective helmet, Nian's vision would probably turn black and she would feel dizzy. Such a fierce and tough style instantly made the atmosphere tense. The homeroom teacher couldn't help but exhort. Friendship first, competition second. We're all classmates. A competition is a competition. You two shouldn't be too serious. The homeroom teacher seemed to think that Zhao Yu was too heavy-handed. However, although Zhao Yu's moves were fierce, there was nothing wrong with her actions. Therefore, when the homeroom teacher advised Zhao Yu to be merciful, it would make people feel that she was biased. The teacher was biased towards Chen Nian? Thinking of this, Zhao Yu suddenly felt uncomfortable. However, she was still a person who cared about her reputation. Seeing Nian sit on the ground, Zhao Yu hesitated for a moment. In the end, she gave up this great opportunity to attack and gave Nian some time to recover. So what if the teacher was biased? This was a competition. Therefore, she had to defeat Chen Nian fair and square in front of everyone. This time, Zhao Yu had to convince everyone wholeheartedly. Yo, why is this child so angry? I guess Nian must have been angry with you a lot. On the rooftop. Chen Shi expressed his opinion as he massaged the big cat. He could tell. This girl named Zhao Yu seemed to have an inexplicable hostility towards Nian. And the source of this hostility should be the so-called jealousy. Although Nian was much younger than Zhao Yu, no matter how one looked at it, Nian was much more outstanding than Zhao Yu, which was why Zhao Yu was hostile towards her. Sometimes, the hatred between girls was just that simple. When you are only a little better than others, others will be jealous of you. But when you are much more outstanding than others, others will envy you from the bottom of their hearts and even see you as a role model. Sometimes, people were just so strange. Zhao Yu's grades were not as good as Nian's. Her looks were not as good as Nian's. Even her popularity in school was not as good as Nian's. If Nian didn't sign up today, Zhao Yu could only hold her anger in. However, Nian still wanted to stand out and steal her limelight. How could Zhao Yu tolerate this? Didn't Chen Nian want to be first in everything? Then, today, she would let Chen Nian experience it firsthand, what it meant to be first. Nian started cultivating early, but started learning martial arts late. So, in terms of martial arts strength, Nian was indeed not Zhao Yu's match. Hence, when the two of them got into their stances and started fighting again, Nian could only take 3 of Zhao Yu's attacks before she started to feel a little weak. Big cat, look, isn't Nian angry? In the arena, Nian was slightly exhausted under Zhao Yu's relentless attacks. Outside the arena, Chen Shi acted like nothing had happened and started chatting with Big Cat. Meow. After hearing Chen Shi's words, Big Cat rolled its eyes, as if it was defending Nian. After all, if Chen Shi hadn't placed a seal on Nian's body, even if 100 Zhao Yu attacked together, they obviously wouldn't be a match for Nian. Although Big Cat was a demon, it had its own emotions. After all, it had watched Nian grow up. Therefore, when Big Cat saw that Nian was clearly a little tired from dealing with Zhao Yu's attacks, but had a stubborn and unyielding expression on her face, it immediately wanted to go up and help Nian. Humph. How could little Princess Nian lose to such a mean girl? The competition continued. There were no mistakes in this competition, nor were there any out of bounds. There was only a lack of skill. When the referee blew the whistle for the third time to ask Nian if she wanted to admit defeat, Xianxia finally smiled in satisfaction. Because, Nian rejected the referee's suggestion once again. Since she was in the arena, as long as she didn't lose, she would continue to persevere. No. I haven't lost yet. I won't admit defeat. The competition was based on points. As long as Nian was hit by Zhao Yu once more, the result of this competition would be decided. Looking at Nian's stubborn and unconvinced look, Zhao Yu couldn't help but sneer. She was already confident of winning. However, just as she readied herself and was ready to completely end this competition, Xianxia on the rooftop smiled and snapped his fingers. Pa! At that moment, Xianxia was like Iron Man wearing the Infinity Glove. He was just short of saying the classic line to Nian himself. I love you 3,000 times. Translation, I love you 3,000 times. In fact, Xianxia didn't care about the result of this competition at all. No matter who won or lost, it was just a trivial matter to Xianxia. What he really cared about, in fact, it was Nian's attitude towards this competition. From Nian's eyes, Xianxia saw the spirit of not admitting defeat. Nian wanted to win. This had nothing to do with personal resentment. It wasn't because she had any vanity or utilitarian heart. It was because she wanted to prove herself through hard work. Nian was constantly knocked down, but she kept getting up. From the beginning to the end, her eyes were so firm. This was the first time Nian fought with someone. Xianxia could accept her falling, but he couldn't accept that she couldn't get up after falling. Therefore, when Nian firmly said that she hadn't lost, Xianxia couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. A snap of his fingers. A layer of seal. And this was Nian's real strength. She wanted to win. He had won fair and square, in a grand and glorious manner. Feeling the cool feeling constantly gushing out from her abdomen, Nian suddenly froze in place. This feeling was so strange. It was icy cold. So comfortable. Thinking of this, Nian couldn't help but reach out and rub her stomach. When she raised her head again, she found that Zhao Yu had rushed in front of her. It was still the same set of moves that she was familiar with. Vajra subduing the tiger, the momentum was overwhelming. But this time, Zhao Yu's movements were like a slow-motion scene with upgraded special effects. Every move was seen by Nian. Therefore, she slowly reached out her left hand and directly grabbed Zhao Yu's right wrist. Then, she did what her father usually taught her. She twisted her hips, turned her waist, lowered her elbow and pressed her wrist. This set of movements was like moving clouds and flowing water. She easily grabbed Zhao Yu and threw her aside. Chapter 560. Whoosh! I announce. The winner of this round is Nian. With the sharp whistle, the first martial arts competition of the capital-affiliated primary school finally came to an end. R. A. N. W. N. W. 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 R. A. N. W. E. N. A. C. O. M. Then, Nian was pushed to the rostrum by her homeroom teacher, much to the surprise of all the teachers and students. She looked at the shiny gold trophy in Nian's hands, then at the dull silver trophy in her own hands. At that moment, tears of resentment and unwillingness flowed down Zhao Yu's cheeks. She couldn't accept it. But, so what if she couldn't accept it? She had been so close to ending the competition. But just as the winner was about to be revealed, Nian seemed to have taken a stimulant. She exploded with power that could make anyone feel despair. It was terrifying. Zhao Yu would never have thought that, in Nian's small body, there was actually an accumulation of vital essence comparable to that of a foundation establishment cultivator. Xianxia had only torn a small crack in the seal, and the true essence that had been accumulated for a long time made Zhao Yu experience what despair was. In the face of absolute power, all techniques were futile. The judges had noticed the change in Nian. But with their current knowledge, they couldn't see through it. So if they really had to find an explanation, they could only choose to believe that Chen Nian had been deliberately hiding her strength. She had won. He had won fair and square, in a glorious manner. Although Nian didn't know why she had won, it didn't affect her good mood. She wanted to give this trophy to her father. Her father would be happy for her. Thinking of this, Nian's smile became even brighter. With the good mood after winning the championship, Nian returned to the classroom happily with the support of a group of students. Now she just had to wait for the teacher to reward her. The teacher had said before that any student who could get a place in the sports meet could make a wish in public, and then the whole class would work together to fulfill it. In short, as long as this wish is not too ridiculous, the teacher will try his best to fulfill it for everyone. It was rare to see the teacher being so generous, so as soon as the students returned to the classroom, they gathered in groups of 3 to 5 and started discussing. As the host of the games, Nian had not participated in any events before. However, she had won the championship in the martial arts competition, so she had a chance to fulfill her wish. Therefore, after the little girl returned to her seat with the trophy, she began to think about what she should wish for later, just like the other students. Do you want snacks? Or do you want toys? Or was it a souvenir? This was the reward Nian deserved for bringing honor to the class, so she naturally had to think about it carefully. But just as she was hesitating, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of her and completely disrupted her train of thought. It was Li Tangyue. At this moment, Nian suddenly realized, it seemed that she hadn't seen Li Tangyue for a long time. Where has she been these past few days? Thinking of this, Nian put down the trophy in her hand, then reached out and patted Li Tangyue's arm, and asked with a puzzled expression, "Where have you been these past few days? Why haven't I seen you?" Hearing this, a strange expression flashed across Li Tangyue's face. As if she had just been a thief, she looked around and made sure that no one was paying attention to her. Then, she replied hesitantly, "I didn't sign up for the competition, so of course you couldn't see me." Oh, okay, Nian didn't doubt her. After hearing Li Tangyue's answer, she handed the trophy in her hand to Li Tangyue and said proudly, "Look. My trophy. Isn't it beautiful?" Perhaps because the sports meet was held every year, there were no trophies for other events. Only the top 3 of the martial arts competition had trophies. This was the gold trophy that only the champion could have. Although the workmanship was a bit rough, it was special, wasn't it? Didn't Li Tangyue not sign up for the competition? Therefore, Nian wanted to share her happiness with her, so she directly stuffed the trophy into Li Tangyue's hands. "This is the trophy I got after I defeated Zhao Yu. Hers is silver, mine is gold. She was defeated by me. If she dares to bully you in the future, I'll throw this trophy at her face. Humph, I'll anger her to death." Nian hooted with a smug expression. She felt that she had helped Li Tangyue vent her anger. However, after Li Tangyue heard this, the expression on her face was still a little strange. At this time, Nian finally noticed Li Tangyue's abnormality, so she immediately went over and asked with concern, "Li Tangyue? What's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell?" "I'm fine." Seeing that Nian was so concerned about her, Li Tangyue's face finally revealed a smile. "Thank you, Chen Nian." Seeing that Li Tangyue finally smiled, the smile on Nian's face suddenly became much brighter. Because the homeroom teacher went to the office to collect the award, when the students returned to the classroom, they gathered in groups of 3 to 5 and whispered to each other, so the entire classroom was a little noisy. They were still in class, wasn't they? Therefore, after a few simple words with Li Tangyue, Nian wanted to get up to maintain class discipline. However, at this time, Skinny Monkey-like's voice suddenly sounded from the back door of the classroom. "Big news! Big news! Everyone quiet down and listen to me." Skinny Monkey-like's voice was very loud and his expression was very exaggerated. Therefore, as soon as he entered the classroom, he attracted the attention of the entire class. "I just saw an announcement on the bulletin board. It was posted by the sports meet inspection team. The announcement said that someone in our class has repeatedly violated discipline. Guess, who is this person? After hearing Skinny Monkey-like's words, a few students immediately asked with righteous indignation, who is it? Isn't this dragging our class down? The sports meet inspection team. As the name implied, it was a special team responsible for maintaining order and inspecting the hygiene of each class during the sports meet. Since the inspection team issued an announcement, it meant that the student who was criticized did indeed make a big mistake. If this wasn't tarnishing the reputation of the class, then what was? Everyone was doing their best for the honor of the class, but this rat shit secretly tarnished the reputation of the class. Who could accept this? Therefore, the students of grade 6 class 2 were like ignited barrels of dynamite, exploding in an instant. Who is it? Who did it? Why aren't you standing up? Skinny Monkey-like hesitated for a moment before suddenly pointing to the front of the classroom. Then, he said with certainty, Li Tangyue. She did it. Chapter 561. Li Tangyue. She did it. With Skinny Monkey's shout, the eyes of the entire class suddenly gathered on Li Tangyue. W? Hearing this, Li Tangyue's reaction was the same as usual. She immediately lay on the table like an ostrich. It seemed that she didn't want to give a reasonable explanation. What did she do? Why was she criticized? A few male students were more hot-tempered. They stood up on the spot and questioned. Seeing this, Skinny Monkey immediately put on a look as if it had nothing to do with him. Then, he pointed at Li Tangyue's back and said loudly, "How would I know? You guys go ask her." After hearing Skinny Monkey's words, the students' eyes suddenly fell on Li Tangyue. It wasn't that Skinny Monkey was deliberately targeting Li Tangyue, but Li Tangyue's behavior had indeed aroused public anger. As a member of grade 6 class 2, everyone tried their best to fight for the honor of the class during the sports meet. But what was Li Tangyue doing? Not only did she not sign up for any competitions, but she didn't even participate in the group events. Of course, participation in the sports meet was not compulsory, so if Li Tangyue was determined not to participate, no one could force her to sign up. If she didn't sign up, then so be it. At most, they could just pretend that she didn't exist. Li Tangyue was selectively ignored by everyone. But who would have thought that, during this sports meet, not only did Li Tangyue not win any honor for the class, but she also secretly smeared the reputation of the class behind their backs. When everyone's collective sense of honor was at its highest, Li Tangyue made such a mistake that damaged the class's image. How could the students accept this? Therefore, no one knew who took the lead, but a language book suddenly cut through the air and directly hit Li Tangyue's back. Bang! Li Tangyue was lucky. The four corners of the textbook didn't hit her, so it didn't hurt very much. But then, countless language textbooks were like a rainstorm. One after another, they were thrown at Li Tangyue. At that moment, Li Tangyue was like a prisoner being paraded on the street, being attacked crazily by her classmates. After the textbooks were thrown, they threw stationery. In any case, they threw whatever was convenient. Damn fat pig. Get out. Our class doesn't welcome you. Scram. Confucius once said, "If he is not my disciple, I will beat the drum and attack him." Li Tangyue was in such a situation now. She was not popular with her classmates to begin with, and she had tarnished the reputation of the class. That was why she was attacked by her classmates like this. Nian was sitting next to Li Tangyue. Perhaps someone's hand accidentally shook, so one of the textbooks that were originally thrown at Li Tangyue suddenly flew to her head. One had to know that Nian was also hot-tempered now. So before the textbook hit her, she reached out and knocked the textbook down. Then, she stood up and shouted at the class, "Stop! What are you doing?" Nian flipped out again. But this time, her bravery did not help at all. The students were still throwing things at Li Tangyue and kept shouting that Li Tangyue should be kicked out of class too. Seeing this, Nian didn't know where she got the strength from, but she suddenly slammed her hand on the desk. Bang! The loud sound shocked everyone present. Everyone looked carefully and realized that Nianyan's desk had been broken by her slap. One had to know that this was not a rotten wooden desk in a village primary school. Chen Nian was actually able to break this iron desk with a single slap. The noisy classroom finally quietened down. For a moment, everyone could not help but keep quiet out of fear. The situation was finally under control. Nianyan hurriedly glanced at the class before quickly walking to Li Tangyue's side. However, just as she was about to ask if Li Tangyue was injured, the voice of the head teacher suddenly came from outside the classroom. "What are you doing? Whose books are these? Why are they all thrown in the corridor? Do you not want to go to class?" After seeing the textbooks thrown all over the floor, the teacher's face immediately darkened. Therefore, as soon as he walked into the classroom, he slammed the certificate in his hand on the podium. "Speak. What's going on? What were you arguing about just now?" After hearing the teacher's voice, the students who were still excited just now suddenly went silent. At this moment, Zhao Yu's voice suddenly rang out in the silent classroom. "Teacher, Li Tangyue has been criticized by the school." It had to be said that this girl was indeed quite scheming. It was just a simple statement, but not only did it successfully divert the teacher's attention, but it also instantly pulled Li Tangyue back into the spotlight. After saying that, Zhao Yu even glared at Nianyan as if to show off. However, what Zhao Yu did not expect was, after hearing her words, the teacher only nodded slightly. There was not much reaction on his face. "Yes, I know." It turned out that when he was receiving the certificate in the office just now, the teacher had already heard the news from others. The entire school was criticized. It was not that Li Tangyue stole anything or hit someone during the sports meet. It was because Li Tangyue was unlucky to be caught by the inspection team 3 times in a row. As everyone knew, although they could move freely during the sports meet, they could not leave the class for too long. Perhaps it was because she was too fat. Li Tangyue had always been afraid of participating in the sports meet. Therefore, as soon as the sports meet began, she returned to the classroom alone to hide. This kind of behavior was absolutely not allowed by the school. When the inspection team caught Li Tangyue for the first time, she was fooled by the excuse of taking something. In the end, she was caught by the inspection team again the next day. This time, she could not fool them. After being reprimanded by the inspection team, Li Tangyue did not dare to stay in the classroom anymore. Instead, she hid on the rooftop. She hid like this for 3 days. She could not ask for leave, nor did she dare to show her face. Because as soon as she showed her face, her classmates would laugh and ask her to participate in the shot put event. "You're so fat, you must be very good at throwing shot put, right?" Li Tangyue was really under a lot of psychological pressure. However, the inspection team's teacher did not care about this. Therefore, when she was caught by the inspection team for the 3rd time on the rooftop, the teacher mercilessly recorded the name Li Tangyue in the inspection report. Her behavior was extremely bad and must be criticized by the entire school. Although Li Tangyue's behavior destroyed the collective image of the 6th grade class too, it also affected the performance of the form teacher. However, from the teacher's point of view, the form teacher could still understand Li Tangyue's behavior, so he did not want to pursue this matter too much. The teacher could understand Li Tangyue's behavior and motivation, but this did not mean that the students could understand. Therefore, after seeing the teacher's indifferent expression, the few students who had been the most vocal immediately stood up with angry faces. "Teacher! Can you kick Li Tangyue out of our class? We don't welcome her." Chapter 562. Being ostracized was not a spur of the moment, but an accumulated disgust. Li Tangyue herself did not do anything wrong, but her image had a very bad impact on grade 6 class too. So much so that when the students in the class went out to the toilet, they might be asked by the students in the next class, "Is there a very, very fat girl in your class?" Perhaps this was just idle chatter, but in the ears of those who heard it, it was no less than a taunt. It was as if Li Tangyue's existence really pulled down the status of the entire class 2 of grade 6. Because of this, many students had been dissatisfied with Li Tangyue for a long time. Big fool. Damn fat woman. Ugly monster. However, scolding was one thing. Li Tengyue was used to being cautious. She would not have conflicts with anyone at all, so the students at most disliked her, but did not rise to the point of shouting and killing. If Nianyan's childhood was colorful, then Li Tengyue's childhood was obviously gray. From the moment she fell ill, she was subconsciously marginalized by everyone. Of course, if she could continue to be marginalized, wouldn't that be a good thing for Li Tengyue? She was not used to being the center of attention, so she was like an ostrich, burying her head in her arms, thinking that she could hide herself this way. But, no matter how Li Tengyue tried to escape, she could not avoid the fact that she was a member of this class. Therefore, from the moment Li Tengyue was criticized by the entire school, she was destined to be abandoned by the collective will. Do not underestimate the will of a collective, especially a collective formed by 11 or 12-year-old children. Li Tengyue had smeared the reputation of the class, so she had to get out of this class. This was a decision made by the collective will, and even the form teacher could not stop it. Therefore, when the first student shouted for Li Tengyue to get out of grade 6 class 2, the classroom, which was originally quiet, suddenly became lively again. Teacher, quickly chase Li Tengyue out. We don't welcome her. She's too bad. Not only did she not win glory for the class, but she also secretly smeared the reputation of the class. Our class does not welcome such a person. That's right. Get out. In the end, the students spontaneously shouted in unison. Li Tengyue. Get out. Li Tengyue. Get out. Li Tengyue. Get out. This was the power of collective will. The homeroom teacher was over 30 years old this year. In his teaching career, which spanned more than 10 years, was it not rare for a teacher to be kicked out of class by a student? Even a teacher could be chased away, let alone a classmate who wasn't welcomed by the school. The teacher didn't know why Li Tengyue had caused so much public anger. However, as the head teacher of the 6th grade class 2, the teacher still couldn't accept the fact that the entire class was ostracizing one person. Therefore, just as the students were shouting in unison, the teacher suddenly flew into a rage. All of you, shut up. What are you doing? Rebellion? His teacher clearly had a lot of prestige. He knew that he couldn't let this matter continue to fester, so he made a prompt decision to suppress the students' shouts and strictly forbade anyone from mentioning this matter again. Don't ever mention this again. The awards ceremony will begin now. Those whose names are called, please come up to the stage to receive your award immediately. After a round of reprimanding to calm the crowd, the teacher took advantage of the opportunity to use his control skill, changing the topic. The teacher didn't care about the reaction of the students at all. He just picked up the award and directly called out the names. Wang Bo, the runner-up of this year's 50-meter sprint, come up to the stage to receive your award. After being called out by the teacher, the boy named Wang Bo hesitated for a moment before going up to the stage to receive his award. What are you all waiting for? Clap. Seeing that the atmosphere wasn't very lively, the teacher took the lead to clap. It had to be said that, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. With this set of changing the topic and attacking one by one combo, the situation that was originally on the verge of getting out of control was suddenly controlled by the teacher. The awards ceremony proceeded in an orderly manner. Everyone seemed to have forgotten what had just happened. Those who received the award, those who applauded clapped, and no one clamored for Li Tengyue to get out of the 6th grade class 2. Okay, have you all received your award? Now fill out the award wish card. The money will be paid for by the class, so don't go too far. Let me think, are you all playing King's Glory? How about this? The student who wins the award can choose any skin that costs less than 888 points of coupon. As for the students who don't play games, they can also choose an item of similar value. What do you think? 888 points of coupon, which was 8 yuan. It wasn't expensive, but it hit the sweet spot of the entire class. What did elementary school students like the most? Wasn't this King of Glory? Therefore, when this proposal came out, the atmosphere was immediately pushed to the climax. This time, the students really forgot about Li Tangyue's incident. They turned to excitedly discuss the contents of the award. What kind of skin should they choose? Guan Yu's charging war god, or Monkey King? The students seemed to be a little excited. They kept scribbling on their wish cards, afraid that they would waste this opportunity. But at this moment, a very discordant voice suddenly sounded in the classroom. Teacher, I don't want a skin, and I don't want a toy. After hearing this voice, the teacher looked up and found that the person who spoke was actually Chen Nian. What? Then what do you want? As the champion of this martial arts competition, Nian naturally received more honor than everyone else. The teacher had previously considered increasing the reward for the champion, but due to the limited class fees, he could only give up on this idea. Like all the winners, Nian also received a chance to fulfill her wish. This wish could be a game skin or a cultural toy. But, however, she had made a wish that was different from the others, so much so that everyone, including the teacher, was stunned. Teacher, my wish is, I hope that everyone will stop bullying Li Tangyue. At this point, Nian actually stood up from her seat with a look of excitement. Maybe I shouldn't use the word pitiful to describe her, but, she's really pitiful. Why? Why do you all bully her? What did she do wrong? You all said that she brought shame to the class, but if it weren't for you all laughing at her, why would she deliberately violate the school rules and secretly hide in the classroom to be caught by the inspection team? It turned out that while the teacher was giving out the award, Nian understood what happened from Li Tangyue. She heard Li Tangyue's inner voice, so she could empathize with Li Tangyue's experience. All this time, Li Tangyue had been silently enduring everything. She thought that as long as she kept her head down and didn't say anything, all the suffering would slowly dissipate with the wind. Just like what happened just now. Her teacher had only used a game skin and was able to neutralize a powerful encirclement and annihilation into nothingness. Look at their indignant expressions just now, looking at how happy they were right now. Nian really couldn't take it anymore. At this moment, she really wanted to ask everyone present, what do you think? Was Li Tangyue wrong, or was the world wrong? Why? I only found a problem when I looked at the comments. Haven't you all had the experience of chasing a teacher off the stage? Not only did you ask the teacher to leave, but it was also very common to ask your classmates to leave. I personally experienced it 3 times, twice in my own class, and once in the next class, so I think the probability of this happening should be very high, right? Mobile version updated the fastest website, M. Chapter 563. If she were to use a certain celebrity's catchphrase as a primer, it would be, my wish is for world peace. Nian wasn't that noble and noble. At such a young age, she probably wouldn't be able to understand what world peace was. She just didn't want to see Li Tangyue being bullied by others. Why? Why did everyone bully her? Just because she was fat? Just because she was a coward? Just because she smelled bad at all times? That smell was indeed unpleasant. But, Li Tangyue didn't want it to be like this. It was worth mentioning here that children with non-alcoholic fatty liver were prone to multiple vitamin deficiencies, including glossitis, angular cheilitis, ecchymosis, hyperkeratosis, and so on. They were also prone to loss of appetite and sweating profusely. The essence of severe cirrhosis was severe hepatitis, and inflammation would cause bad breath and body odor. Patients naturally couldn't bathe as frequently as normal people, so Li Tangyue smelled bad at all times. This was also the main reason why no one was willing to get close to her, let alone become friends with her. Not only was she ugly, but she also smelled bad. Who could stand that? Probably only Nian, who had her own body fragrance, was immune to this smell. Li Tangyue knew that she had bad breath and body odor, so she usually covered herself tightly with her autumn school uniform and wouldn't speak easily. It was clearly just a physical illness, but now it was more like a mental illness. Nian really didn't understand. Weren't patients a vulnerable group? But why did everyone ostracize her, bully her, and even take pleasure in it? The teacher had already heard about the students ostracizing Li Tangyue. However, as a teacher, he was powerless in such a situation. This was the collective will of the 6th grade class too. Even as the actual leader of this group, he couldn't forcefully change this will. The only thing the teacher could do was to give Li Tangyue some extra help, such as taking care of Li Tangyue in her studies or psychological counseling. After all, she could only rely on herself to get rid of the shadow of her childhood. Is this your wish? After hearing Nianyan's words, the teacher couldn't help but have a flash of admiration on his face. Finally, someone stood up for Li Tangyue. Thus, the teacher took this opportunity to seriously brainstorm the entire class. Did you all hear what Chen Nian said? I don't know who took the lead to kick Li Tangyue out of our class just now, and I don't want to find out who took the lead. I just hope that you can understand, Li Tangyue is also a member of our class. Li Tangyue is indeed in the wrong first, but this is not an excuse for you to ostracize her. Chen Nian's words make a lot of sense. If you guys hadn't ostracized Li Tangyue first, how could she have been caught by the inspection team hiding in the classroom? She's a patient. Is this how you treat patients? Think about it carefully. Are your actions just now worthy of the red scarves on your necks? As the saying goes, the law cannot punish the majority. Under such circumstances, the teacher could only speak eloquently to everyone present. Not everyone hated Li Tangyue from the bottom of their hearts. They just liked to follow the trend. Because if they chose to stand on Li Tangyue's side, it meant that they would have to go against the majority of the class. Not everyone was as firm as Nianyan, and not everyone was as strong as Nianyan. They were afraid of being ostracized, so they chose to stand on the side of the majority. Previously, when Li Tangyue was bullied, she would only hold it in and not say a word. Today, because of Nianyan, the teacher finally seized the opportunity to educate the entire class. Perhaps the teacher's words had an effect. Therefore, when the teacher asked everyone if they would treat Li Tangyue with a friendly attitude in the future, most of the students in the class nodded gently. Everyone must remember that we are a group, and a group is absolutely inseparable from unity. So I hope that similar things won't happen again. Can we? After the teacher's speech, there was a burst of warm applause from the audience. But applause was applause. Nianyan looked back and found that many of her classmates still had a disapproving expression on their faces. It was obvious that they would not change their views just because of their teacher's speech. Perhaps in the short term, they would not do anything excessive. But as time passed, everything would become the same as before. The leader would continue to lead, and the follower would continue to follow. The root of the problem was still Li Tangyue. At that moment, Nianyan couldn't help but feel a little lost. What could she do to help Li Tangyue out of her current predicament? With this question in mind, Nianyan returned home and told Qianxi everything that happened today. In this regard, Qianxi took the opportunity to give the little girl a piece of advice: never use your own misfortune to beg for others' pity. Li Tangyue was indeed wrong. Her mistake was to seal herself off, so that no one could perceive her inner feelings. The more Li Tangyue kept silent about all the injustices she had encountered, the more it showed that she cared. She was afraid of becoming a weirdo in the eyes of others, but she didn't know that she had already become a weirdo in the eyes of others. When a person loses the least bit of strength and optimism, she is destined to have a tragic ending. What's wrong with a fatty? Can't a fatty be optimistic and confident? Can't a fatty have friends? If Li Tangyue had opened her heart earlier and tried to make a few sincere friends, would she have fallen to this point today? This kind of mentality was not right. It was worthy of criticism. Of course, Li Tangyue was only a 12-year-old child after all. Naturally, it was impossible for her to have a strong heart like an adult. So, Qianxi still had a certain degree of sympathy for Li Tangyue's experience. Hey, Nianyan, this is the all-nourishing pill that Dad recently developed. It's a secret ancestral Chinese medicine prescription. It's guaranteed to cure all diseases, and the effect is great. Take it and give it to her. It should be able to cure her illness. Qianxi hadn't refined medicine for a long time, so this pill was taken from Big Cat's plate. Nian didn't know that her father had such a trick up his sleeve, so when she heard that this pill could cure Li Tangyue, her face suddenly showed an extremely excited expression. Nian, you must remember, not everyone is as lucky as Li Tangyue. If one day you fall into the same predicament as her, then you must remember, you must never be like her in the future. Only when you learn to be strong can you walk out of all the difficulties you face. Do you understand? Nian was very happy because she got the pill, but she took the opportunity to lecture her. Perhaps it was because today's matter had left a deep impression on her, so when Xi's voice fell, the little girl actually stood there in a daze, as if deep in thought. Seeing this, Shi wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he squatted beside her and looked at her with a smile. After a long while, Nian seemed to have suddenly thought of something. She couldn't help but look at Shi and answered with certainty, I understand. Good, it's good that you understand. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 564. In the blink of an eye, it was winter in Shangjing. There were 2 types of winters in Shangjing. One was a sunny day when the sun was shining, and the other was a cloudy day when it was about to snow. When it was sunny, the sky was blue, just like the windows that the family cleaned during the new year. It was clean and transparent. Looking up at the sky from the ground, the clouds were like ethereal white ribbons, fluttering above one's head. It was a kind of lofty and cold beauty. The cold northwest wind blew, blowing away the haze above the city and the coldness in people's hearts. This was probably the reason why Nian liked winter so much. Only in winter would this little girl, wrapped in a thick quilted jacket, act like she used to. She didn't care about her image as an official. As long as she saw the snow piled up to a certain height in the corner of the wall, she would jump up high and then sit down heavily on it. Even though she had been in Shangjing for many years, this silly girl still had the characteristics of a southerner who loved to play with snow. Therefore, her behavior always caused the next-door neighbor to laugh heartily. It really was like the saying, Southerners think that snow is fun, while Northerners think that Southerners are more fun. After talking about sunny days, it was time to talk about cloudy days. If Shangjing was cold on a sunny day, then Shangjing was manic on a cloudy day. Coincidentally, today was such a cloudy day. It was currently morning, but the sky was gray and only a sliver of white light could be seen. Nian leaned against the window and took a look. Her little mouth immediately pouted so much that she could hang an oil bottle. Her father didn't allow her to go out because it was windy outside. The little girl was not convinced, so she ignored Xi's dissuasion and forced open the door and ran out into the courtyard. But as soon as she stepped out of the door, the biting cold wind seemed to have found a vent and smashed into her face with snowflakes. What entered her eyes was a vast expanse of white, making it hard for her to open her eyes. If it was only raining and not windy, then Nian could carry her textbooks to the courtyard and enjoy the snow while studying. Wasn't this a very artistic matter? She might even be able to comprehend some incredible principles of heaven and earth from it. Speaking of which, Nian had reached the age where she loved to fantasize. In fact, to ordinary people, Shangjing was just a slightly bigger city. However, after carefully observing the surroundings, one would discover that in a place like Shangjing, there was no trace of the childlike atmosphere of one's hometown. It operated in an orderly manner. Even though many cultural places were forcibly created for people to reminisce about, it still gave people a sense of discomfort. Everything here seemed so deliberate. Even if an outsider lived here for 10 or 20 years, they would never be able to truly become a citizen of Shangjing. Perhaps, when the last batch of Shangjing natives gradually grew old, the stories in those old alleys would slowly dry up with time, right? The wind outside was too strong, so Nian couldn't go out. She took the remote control and accompanied her to watch the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber. Didn't her Xin Nian's 9 Yang divine art come from here? Thus, not long after the TV started, Nian was completely immersed in it. When she was in high spirits, this silly girl would even excitedly stand on the bed and dance her arms and legs to imitate the moves on TV. Hey! Father, take this. Eat my Xianming divine palm. Hey! Don't move. Father, you're frozen by me. Ha 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 ha. Now that martial arts were popular, the students in the class would occasionally exchange a few moves with each other. Naturally, Nian was no exception. However, she was after all a girl, and at the same time, she was also the class monitor of the 6th grade class too. Thus, she naturally couldn't be like the others who fooled around with each other. Thinking about it, only in front of Qin could she be like the other children and show her innocent side without any hindrance. Nian excitedly jumped around on the bed. Qin sat on the edge of the bed with a fatherly smile on his face. The cold wind whistled outside the room, but the room was warm and harmonious. The only thing that made people feel a little regretful was that Ying was still in closed-door cultivation. No one knew when she would successfully break through to the golden core stage. Because of this, Nian even moved next door to live with Qin. Father, when will mother finish revising her homework? It feels like she hasn't been out for a long time. Perhaps it was because the hearts of father and daughter were connected, so when Qin thought of Qin Ruoying, Nian had already opened her mouth to ask. Should be soon. Don't worry, don't worry. Qin didn't give a definite answer. After all, core formation was like childbirth. Even if you knew that the child was already pregnant, you couldn't be sure exactly when the child would be born. Of course, cesarean section was an exception. Speaking of which, it was a coincidence. Just as the father and daughter were talking, an extremely strong wave of true essence suddenly surged in the courtyard. Immediately after, an earth-shattering muffled sound of thunder rang in the sky. Rumble. 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 The rolling thunder suddenly sounded. Even though they were separated by a window, Nian was shocked. It's thunder. Father, it's thunder. Is it going to rain? In the middle of winter, there's actually thunder? Nian was now a top student, so she clearly remembered that her natural science teacher once said that the formation of thunderclouds generally required 2 conditions, which were sufficient water vapor and intense convective movement. The temperature in winter was dry, and the sun's radiation was weak, so it was basically impossible for thunder to appear. Thus, as soon as the thunder roared, the little girl lay on the bed and quickly crawled to the window. As the saying went, thunder in winter, 9 out of 10 cattle fences were empty. Thunder in winter was news that would appear on TV. Nian was excitedly waiting for the thunder to sound again, but Qin frowned and looked in the direction of the room next door. No. This was not Ying's aura. Although Ying was only 1 step away from core formation, this step was not so easy to cross. Rumble. The rolling thunder sounded again. Immediately after, a ray of light suddenly flashed in the sky. Whoa! Nian subconsciously took a cold breath. Because she saw with her own eyes that the lightning struck the center of their yard. Father, father. Perhaps because she was too excited, Nian's voice changed a lot. She called out a couple of times. When she looked back, she found that Qin had left the room at some point. This made Nian anxious. Therefore, she did not care whether it was still raining or thunder outside and rushed out of the room. Father? Where did you go? While shouting for her father, Nian opened the door. However, as soon as she stepped out of the door, she was lifted up by a gentle force. What's wrong? Are you scared? I forgot to mention that during this period of time, people were on tenterhooks. It was said that 210,000 books were banned from the city channel. The boss of Jianghu was also invited for tea. This was the strictest in history, so during this period of time, everyone was frantically self-examining. Forgive me, keep a low profile. Chapter 565. After Nian ran out of the house, Qin gently picked her up. Feeling the sense of security brought to her by her father's arms, the little girl quickly returned to her fearless nature. Thus, she faced the sky full of snow and thunder and shouted excitedly, as if she was watching a sci-fi movie. She did not take the natural wonders in front of her seriously at all. Boom! 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 One after another, the sound of thunder exploded in the sky. The flowers and trees in the courtyard were all blown away by the fierce wind that came out of nowhere. If it was summer now, this kind of weather would be a very normal change in climate. However, with the addition of the bone-chilling snowflakes, the situation obviously became a little strange. Looking at the terrible scene of the raging snow and thunder, if nothing unexpected happened, tomorrow, the hot search list would definitely see the words Shangjing, thunder, tribulation, and so on. All units, all units, all units, all units, all units, attention. It seems that there is a fellow cultivator in front of us who is going through a tribulation. Please retreat quickly. In fact, for a real cultivator, how could a few lightning bolts be considered a tribulation? Not to mention a supreme existence like Qianxi, even the little rookies in the golden core stage probably would not take the thunder and lightning seriously. Heavenly tribulation did exist, but it was completely different from what everyone imagined. After all, it was a level that even Qianxi could not touch. With the mentality of watching a show, Qianxi took the little girl under the eaves to enjoy the wind for a while. Today, this strange phenomenon of heaven and earth lasted for about half an hour, and then slowly subsided. The sky returned to its previous dark and calm. The wind stopped. But the snow did not stop. Large pieces of snow sprinkled in the courtyard, and in a short while, the ground was covered with a layer of light white frost. Just as Nian could not wait to go to the courtyard to build a snowman, a light sound suddenly came from the main hall. Creak. Then, a figure that they had not seen for a long time appeared in front of the father and daughter. Nian turned her head to take a look. After seeing the appearance of the person who came, her face suddenly revealed an incomparably bright smile. Grandfather. You're back. The person who came was Qin Yongyan, who had disappeared for a long time. The heaven and earth anomaly just now was caused by him successfully condensing the golden core. As usual, when Nian saw Qin Yongyan, she eagerly rushed up to him, wanting him to carry her. However, just as she was about to approach Qin Yongyan, an invisible force sent her flying. If it wasn't for Qianxi's timely intervention, Nian might have been injured. And this is the so-called celestial being. Golden core stage. Qianxi finally understood why Yingying's aptitude was so bad. Wasn't her father a real mediocre? Even with the accumulation of various resources, it still took him such a long time to break through to the gold core realm. From this point of view, Yingying and her father's aptitude was indeed much worse than that of his sister-in-law's family. Fortunately, there was such an excellent live-in son-in-law like Qianxi to improve the bloodline of the Qin family. Otherwise, what would the Qin family do in the future? Father, congratulations. After all, Qin Yongyan was Yingying's father. Since his father-in-law had a major breakthrough in his cultivation, Qianxi naturally had to send his blessings as soon as possible. Therefore, he brought Nian and respectfully greeted Qin Yongyan. Although they had lived under the same roof for many years, Qianxi still felt a little awkward when interacting with Qin Yongyan now. Perhaps this was the true portrayal of the relationship between a father-in-law and a son-in-law. Qin Yongyan had finally come out of seclusion. As a junior, Qianxi brought Nian to sit with him in the main hall for a while. Although it was just an awkward conversation, it was still a necessary etiquette, wasn't it? But, what was there to talk about between a father-in-law and a son-in-law? In the end, the topic still turned to Qin Ruoying. Qianxi, is Yingying about to come out of seclusion? Why do I feel that the aura on her body seems to be much more powerful than mine now? As he spoke, Qin Yongyan turned his gaze to the west wing. After successfully condensing his gold core, his understanding of cultivation was naturally different from before. Therefore, even though there was a restriction isolation, Qin Yongyan could sense the waves of vital essence coming from Yingying's room. And this made Qin Yongyan feel a little strange. He was now considered a real gold core cultivator, and Yingying was merely at the peak of the foundation establishment stage. How could the waves of vital essence she caused be stronger than his? It didn't make sense. Unless Qianxi gave Yingying special treatment. Thinking of this, Qin Yongyan couldn't help but look at Qianxi again. He wasn't jealous of his daughter and thought that Xianxia was biased. He just wanted to confirm whether Yingying's state was normal. As a father, he naturally had to care more about his daughter. However, after hearing Qin Yongyan's words, Xianxia frowned slightly. Yingying's aura had suddenly become stronger recently. Previously, he had thought that Yingying was about to break through, which was why such a situation had occurred. According to his original estimation, Qin Ruoying would have a breakthrough within 3 months. But now, compared to Qin Yongyan's situation when he broke through, Xianxia's heart was a little uncertain. It seemed a little strange. Maybe I've poured too many resources into Yingying, so her aura when she forms her gold core is stronger than ordinary people? This kind of wave is indeed a little strange, but you can rest assured, with me here, there won't be any problems. After thinking for a while, Xianxia finally gave a clear answer. The most taboo when one was breaking through in seclusion was to be disturbed, so Xianxia didn't dare to release his divine sense to observe the situation in the West Wing. Although he couldn't be sure of Yingying's situation now, with Xianxia's strength, he was still confident that he could protect Qin Ruoying's safety. After all, he was the best midwife in the world. After hearing Xianxia's guarantee, Qin Yongyan was finally relieved, so he wanted to change the topic and ask about Qin Xueqing's recent situation. But before he could ask, Nianyan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly opened her mouth and interrupted the two's conversation. Of course, my mother is the most powerful mother in the world. After she finished speaking, the little girl even raised her chin proudly. So, when Xianxia and Qin Yongyan were talking, they didn't avoid the little girl. Although she couldn't understand their conversation, she could roughly understand the meaning of their words. The general meaning was, Mother is very powerful. She scared father and grandfather. Therefore, this little girl couldn't wait to jump out and show off, and at the same time, emphasize her existence. Note, have you forgotten that I've been banned 3 times before? I haven't been released yet. Yes, when the book review section can be displayed normally, this storm should be over. Chapter 566. After hearing Nianyan's words, Xianxia and Qin Yongyan couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. Hey, didn't you always say that Dad is the most powerful person in the world? Why are you suddenly saying Mom is the most powerful person in the world? Do you like the new and hate the old so much? Xianxia pretended to be jealous and pinched her face. Hearing this, Nianyan answered matter-of-factly, Dad is the most powerful dad, Mom is the most powerful mom, and Grandpa is the most powerful grandpa. There's no conflict. After hearing this, the husband and son-in-law couldn't help but burst out laughing. This child was really the happiest person in the family. After being interrupted by Nianyan, the atmosphere in the family became much more relaxed and comfortable. After Xianxia and Qin Yongyan chatted for a while, there was a sudden soft knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Big Cat was lying on the beam and taking a nap. After hearing the knock, it immediately took on the responsibility of guarding the house. It quickly jumped to the wall in the front yard and poked half of its head out to look outside. Hello, Mr. Chen. It's me, Xiao Wang from the inspection department. Outside the yard, Xiao Wang from the Wu Lian inspection department stretched his neck and shouted into the house. Xianxia had never put on airs in front of Xiao Wang, so Xiao Wang was getting bolder and bolder. Now, he even dared to shout loudly outside the yard. In the house. Xianxia and Qin Yongyan looked at each other and smiled knowingly. Obviously, they had already guessed the purpose of Xiao Wang's visit. Please come in. Xianxia's voice suddenly sounded. Xiao Wang hesitated for a moment, then gently pushed open the gate. This was the first time he entered the courtyard. It was obvious that little Wang was in awe of this quadrangular courtyard that had long been dubbed as a forbidden place by the Martial Alliance's internal members. It was to the extent that he did not even dare to look around when he entered the courtyard. Instead, he quickly walked to the inner courtyard with his head lowered. Come in and sit. Don't worry, there are no outsiders at home. Just like the local officials in ancient times who were fortunate enough to meet the emperor, little Wang felt as if he had arrived at the throne room the moment he entered the courtyard. A strong pressure even made him breathless. When Qianxi saw how uncomfortable Xiao Wang looked, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he said to Qin Yongyan tactfully, "Dad, you just broke through. You should learn to control yourself." Hearing this, Qin Yongyan suddenly had a look of realization. Did he scare little Wang? However, there was nothing he could do. Qin Yongyan had just broken through, and his aura was still somewhat unstable. It was inevitable that he would lose control of the vital essence in his body. Thanks to Qianxi's help, little Wang was able to escape from this pressure. This was the might of a gold core elder. Little Wang stole a glance at Qin Yongyan with lingering fear. After regaining his senses, he forced himself to calm down and said to the two people in the hall, "Seniors, it's like this. Just now, our colleagues from the investigation department discovered a huge energy fluctuation in your courtyard. We guessed that someone broke through to the celestial realm here, so the leader sent me here to confirm, so that the headquarters can update the file in time." Update the file? After hearing little Wang's words, Qianxi and Qin Yongyan revealed a meaningful smile on their faces. Who was little Wang's leader? Wasn't it Wang Chuanju and her husband? Why didn't they call to ask in person, but instead sent little Wang to visit and confirm? Wasn't it because Qin Yongyan had always been disgusted with these worldly institutions and only wanted to concentrate on cultivation? Before this, Qin Yongyan had even advised Wang Chuanju and her husband many times, hoping that they would put more effort into cultivation. After all, Qin Yongyan was the eldest brother, so naturally, his words carried a lot of weight. However, for civil servants like Wang Chuanju and her husband who wholeheartedly served the country and its people, their personal interests obviously couldn't be compared to the interests of the country. Therefore, they sent little Wang to visit. They wanted to put aside their personal feelings and extend an olive branch to this newly ascended celestial realm person from the perspective of the country. To be honest, Wang Chuanju didn't even think that Qin Yongyan would agree to join the Wu Lian. The reason she sent little Wang over was just to go through the formalities, to show the Wu Lian's respect for every powerhouse in the country. However, what Wang Chuanju never expected was, after hearing little Wang's words, a playful smile suddenly appeared on Qin Yongyan's face. Other than updating the file, does your leader have any other instructions? Little Wang couldn't help but be stunned. Although he was young, his work ability was still very strong. Therefore, little Wang instantly understood what Qin Yongyan was implying. He hurriedly replied, "Leader also said that she actually has something that she needs your help with. If you're willing to make a trip, she'll definitely personally brew a pot of Longjing tea before the rain festival for you. She'll be waiting for you to come." After hearing little Wang's words, Qin Yongyan instantly burst into laughter. "Oh, my sister-in-law, she's already a leader, why is she still so stingy?" With a smile on his face, Qin Yongyan stood up. Seeing this, little Wang hurriedly stood up and stood aside. He couldn't hide the joy on his face. "Qianxi, I'm sure you know that your second aunt isn't the kind of person who would visit you for no reason. Your cultivation level is high, so she can't order you around too often. Since I just had a breakthrough, why don't I go over and see if there's anything I can help with and consolidate my current cultivation level? I'll leave the family to you. When Yingying comes out, remember to inform me. When the time comes, I'll call Yongwang and Chuanju. Our family should also have a good gathering." After some advice, Qin Yongyan followed little Wang out of the courtyard. Qianxi held Ninian's hand and stood behind the door to say goodbye to him. Although Qin Yongyan said that he just wanted to go to Wu Lian for a cup of tea, he and Qianxi both knew that this trip would take some time. Although Wang Chuanju didn't say it explicitly, her actions had already explained, she should have encountered some problems recently. It couldn't be helped. Who told his sister-in-law to sneak to the Supreme Palace enclosure? Without a powerful fighter like Qin Shueching, Wang Chuanju's work was naturally difficult, so she needed the help of her family. After all, the people living in this courtyard were a family. Even if Wang Chuanju and her husband didn't come back all year round, their room would always be there. "Okay, Dad." After listening to Qin Yongyan's advice, Qianxi nodded silently. To be honest, in Qin Yongyan's words, he actually felt a trace of the warmth of a family. Unlike the small family he and Yingying formed, the warmth of a big family was usually impossible to feel. But this gentle and silent warmth was no less than the weight of his and Yingying's small family. Thinking about it. Chapter 567. This year's Spring Festival was half a month earlier than previous years. January 24th was New Year's Eve. Therefore, as soon as New Year's Day was over, there was a festive atmosphere in Beijing. Red lanterns were hung on the lampposts by the roadside, and a series of festive decorations such as peach blossoms were placed at the entrance of major shopping malls. It seemed that people wanted to continue the New Year's Day celebration until the Spring Festival. Unfortunately, the New Year's Day holiday was only 3 days, including 2 weekends. For the children who could never have enough fun, such a short holiday was obviously no different from not having a holiday at all. In the blink of an eye, Nian had to carry her backpack and report to school on time. People often say that responsibility makes people grow up. As she grew older and gradually matured, Nian was no longer as playful and willful as before. Since she carried the responsibility of the class leader, she naturally had to set an example. Therefore, while the other students in the class were still immersed in the joy of the holiday, Nian had already come to the classroom and replaced the student on duty to do the work. She wiped the blackboard, swept the floor, took out the trash, set up the tables and chairs. While she was busy, the other students also came to the classroom one after another, but no one took the initiative to help her. In this regard, Nian did not take it to heart. Instead, she continued to huff and puff non-stop. She was the class leader, so she was both the study committee member, the discipline committee member, and the health committee member. If the class leader didn't take the lead, how could the other students believe in her? It could be seen that Nian's prestige was not for nothing. After Nian was busy for a while, the other students also came to the classroom one after another. She stood on the podium and looked around. She only felt that the empty seat in front of her was so dazzling. Li Tangyue hadn't come to school for a long time. The day after Nian gave the pill to Li Tangyue, this fat girl's parents asked for a very long leave on her behalf. Li Tangyue's disappearance didn't cause any commotion. No one laughed at her, and no one excluded her. Other than Nian, no one else would care about this big idiot who was already ostracized. Do you still remember the scene when the whole class shouted, "Li Tangyue, get out of here"? Nian didn't know how Li Tangyue felt at that time, but as a bystander, it was an unforgettable scene. It was also from that day onwards that Nian truly experienced a brand new feeling. The name of this feeling is sorrowful. She felt sad for Li Tangyue's situation and also sad that she couldn't help others. Don't think that children don't know how to think about life. In fact, their spiritual world is very rich. Happiness, anger, sorrow, joy, sorrow, fear, and worry. They could think, fantasize, quarrel, fall in love, lie, be jealous, and even chase after stars like adults. And only in this way would they be a complete human. As the rest of the students entered the classroom, Li Tangyue's empty seat became more and more conspicuous. And this also cast a shadow over Nian's originally good mood. Her mood suddenly became a little gloomy, so after finishing the work at hand, she directly returned to her seat and spaced out. There were still a few minutes before class started, so most of the students returned to their seats to prepare for class. But at this moment, the skinny monkey suddenly jumped into the classroom from the back door and opened his mouth to shout. "Extra, extra! There's big news again. Do you want to hear it?" The skinny monkey said as he waved the paper in his hand. "Why are you keeping us in suspense? Hurry up." "Yeah, hurry up and tell us." As the little smart guy in the class, the skinny monkey liked to go around collecting news and then bring the news back to the class firsthand to gain the attention of the students. Therefore, when the skinny monkey heard the students' agreement, he suddenly laughed proudly. "Dang dang dang dang, look! This is a love letter from Zhong Chen from the next class to our class leader. It's so mushy. Do you want me to read it to you?" The first half of the 6th grade semester was coming to an end. In a few more months, everyone present would be able to successfully remove the label of primary school students and become secondary school students. Therefore, some of the precocious children were now even more unscrupulous. According to past experience, it should be a very secretive behavior for elementary school students to send love letters to each other. However, the skinny monkey got the information from somewhere, so his words immediately caused quite a stir in the class. Read it. Hurry up and read it. Hurry up. The teacher is coming. Our class leader skipped 2 grades. Is Zhongchen an old cow eating young grass? Ha 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 ha. It had to be said that hearing the words an old cow eating young grass from the mouth of these little brats was a bit strange. But, as far as everyone in the class was concerned, no one felt that there was anything wrong with this sentence. Instead, they all agreed. This was because in this school, the 6th grade students were the oldest. Of course, this did not include Nian. The skinny monkey usually liked to play to the gallery, so when he received such a rare file, he was even more excited. Therefore, the moment he received the response of the students, this kid opened the envelope and read it directly. Then I'll read it. Everyone, listen up. Chen Nian, hello, I'm Zhongchen from the 6th grade class 2. Nice to meet you. Actually, I've always wanted to. The skinny monkey read the contents of the envelope with great emotion. However, he had only just read the beginning of the letter when his voice was suddenly interrupted by a stationery box that was thrown at him. Bang! The stationery box did not hit the skinny monkey. Instead, it hit the wall not far away from him. Even so, this sudden loud noise still shocked everyone. Then, under everyone's gaze, Nian walked in front of the skinny monkey with an expressionless face. Give it to me. It was a simple and powerful word. At that moment, the skinny monkey looked at the class leader who was a few centimeters shorter than him in front of him and felt terrified from the bottom of his heart. He was frightened by Nian's gaze. It had been so long since school started, but this was the first time the skinny monkey saw Nian reveal such a gaze. It was a gaze that was cold enough to make people tremble. It was like a queen with a strong aura. The skinny monkey was obviously frightened. He quickly stuffed the envelope into Nian's hands and ran back to his seat like a wisp of smoke. Then, he lowered his head and did not dare to say a word. For a moment, the entire classroom was silent. Rip. With a soft sound, Nian tore the envelope in her hand into pieces and threw them into the trash can. Then, she slowly turned around and glanced at everyone in the room with an expressionless face. Very fun, right? Chapter 568. She looked at the skinny monkey who liked to play to the gallery, and then looked at the students who were blindly cheering, at that moment. Nian's mood was particularly complicated. She had been to many classes and met many new students, but there was really no class that was as cold as 6th grade class 2. This class seemed to be united on the surface, but in their bones, it was like a sandstone fortress. With a gentle splash of water, such a huge fortress would instantly turn into scattered sand. Just like now. She was the sudden splash of cold water. Unlike the classes Nian had been in before, the students in 6th grade class 2 preferred to see others embarrassed, and some even took pleasure in it. Not only one person, but the whole class was like this. The reason for this phenomenon was actually very simple. Because everyone in the class had witnessed the whole process of Li Tengyue being excluded, they were very afraid that one day they would become the same person as Li Tengyue. Don't underestimate the influence of a class on a child. After all, this was the only group they could come into contact with after leaving home. Since they had come to a new group, there were obviously only 2 choices in front of them as independent individuals. Either integrate into it or drift away. How to integrate? That was to work harder to exclude others and use them as a shield to make themselves safer and less likely to be discovered if they hid in the crowd. Looking at the entire capital-affiliated primary school, such a problematic class was actually very rare. Only some specific factors could create such a special situation. Therefore, when Nian first came to this class, she didn't find any difference between this class and the other classes. If 6th grade Class 2's class was exclusive, then Nian, who had always been upright and friendly, obviously couldn't agree with such a collective atmosphere. She was like a gust of wind blowing from the mountains, with a completely different smell, and was bound to blow away the stench that permeated the classroom. Of course, this was definitely not something that could be done overnight. If there had to be a word to describe it, then the word must be influence. Like a preacher, she used her words and actions to influence everyone around her. When they were no longer able to form a group, a new collective will would be born from this. After all, Nian was not Li Tangyue. Although she was young, she was not someone to be bullied. Therefore, when Nian threw a tantrum, the class immediately quieted down. The entire classroom was silent. Because he was afraid that Nian would beat him up, the skinny monkey was so scared that he didn't even dare to raise his head. But the good thing was, Nian tore up the letter in her hand and threw it away. She had no intention of denouncing him. Instead, she silently returned to her seat. There were so many people who liked her, so what was a mere zhongchen? Regarding this, Nian did not even take it to heart. Perhaps only the students in the class who had never seen the world would find this kind of thing very novel, right? The silence in the classroom did not last long. Soon, a melodious ringtone sounded in the corridor. Now for the morning reading, please turn to page 22, The Story of the Deer and the Wolf. According to the teacher's previous instructions, after the ringtone sounded, Nian picked up the textbook and went directly to the podium. This was already an old rule, so even if the teacher had not arrived yet, the students picked up their textbooks and read aloud with Nian. Roosevelt would never have thought that the wolf he ordered to kill was actually the protector of the forest. It seems cruel for a wolf to eat a deer, but it maintains the stability of the deer population. Accompanied by a burst of neat reading, the teacher quickly walked into the classroom. Everyone, stop for a moment, I have something to announce. As soon as the teacher entered the door, she clapped her hands and directly interrupted the students' morning reading. Seeing this, Nian thought that the teacher was going to use the morning reading time to lecture everyone again, so she immediately picked up her textbook and walked off the podium. But the moment she turned around and walked off the podium, Nian suddenly froze in place. Because she saw the figure standing outside the classroom door. Li Tangyue. Because of her health, Li Tangyue applied for 2 months of leave from me. Now, she has finally returned safely. So I hope everyone can welcome her with warm applause. Applause. After that, the teacher took the lead in applauding. Unlike the teacher's enthusiasm, after the students heard the words Li Tangyue, they were obviously a little uninterested. It was as if they had not eaten breakfast. In the sparse applause, only Nian was clapping hard. Then, the figure who had been hiding outside the door slowly walked into the classroom under the encouragement of the teacher's eyes. F***CK? Li Tangyue? Look! Is this Li Tangyue? Wow! She is Li Tangyue? Are you kidding me? The ancient said, a scholar who has been away for 3 days should be looked at with new eyes. How long had Li Tangyue been gone? It seemed to be more than 2 months. In everyone's impression, Li Tangyue was actually like an old sow in a pigsty, fat and smelly. However, the figure who slowly walked into the classroom was completely different from everyone's impression. Was this really Li Tangyue? Although fatties were all potential stocks, wasn't this too exaggerated? Li Tangyue was tall to begin with. She was at least half a head taller than Nian. She was estimated to be at least 1.65 meters tall. Children nowadays were well nourished. In the north, 1.65 meters was not too unusual. But who would have thought, after Li Tangyue lost weight, she would actually be so beautiful? Zhao Yu was already beautiful enough, right? But compared to Li Tangyue, not only did Zhao Yu lose her height advantage, even her face was inferior to Li Tangyue's. Zhao Yu's nose bridge was not high, and she had always relied on makeup to make up for it. Li Tangyue did not have these worries. Because her facial features were originally very exquisite, she only needed to stand there casually, and immediately formed a beautiful picture with Nian beside her. Was this still the Li Tangyue in everyone's memory? The current her seemed to be truly worthy of her name. The beauty of the Chinese Tangyue can't be ignored. The moon is bright, and the outstanding people are gathered. Li Tangyue's appearance also successfully caused a commotion in the classroom. Just as everyone was discussing whether or not she was Li Tangyue was still the same as before. She shrugged her head and quickly walked back to her seat. Okay, everyone quiet down and get ready for class. She is indeed Li Tangyue. Yeah, but she's a lot thinner than before. Li Tangyue was more than a lot thinner. It was like she had undergone liposuction surgery. Perhaps because they were too shocked, no matter how the teacher called out, the students could not quiet down. At this moment, Li Tangyue, as the person involved, secretly wrote a note and handed it to Nian. There was only one line on the paper. It said, "Thank you, Chen Nian." Chapter 569. Speaking of which, it was strange. Since the day Li Tangyue returned to the class, the overall atmosphere of the class changed a lot. Even Skinny Monkey, who used to yell, big idiot," when he had nothing to do, suddenly became a little quiet. He no longer hid in the crowd blindly, and he no longer excitedly spread some gossip that he heard from the next class. It felt like he suddenly changed his temperament, and his whole person became a lot quieter and more reserved. It was obvious that the Skinny Monkey fell into the vortex of love. There was no way to hide liking someone, especially at the age of first awakening of love. Although Nian didn't understand why the Skinny Monkey suddenly became a little strange, her intuition told her that the Skinny Monkey's change couldn't be separated from Li Tangyue. Didn't you see that the Skinny Monkey didn't like to run around anymore? Every time during class, this kid would deliberately pretend to be obsessed with studying, and then constantly peek at Li Tangyue from the corner of his eyes. This kind of behavior that bordered on infatuation, wasn't it obvious enough? In this regard, Li Tangyue seemed to be aware of it. Just like the turnaround of The Ugly Girl, The Princess Diaries, and The Small Thing of First Love, the huge change in appearance unconsciously gave her a strong sense of self-confidence. Slowly, no one dared to mock her anymore, and no one shouted for her to get out of class 2, grade 6. Noticing that everyone's attitude towards her had changed, and that many students were even willing to interact with her, Li Tangyue gradually regained her long-lost confidence. She was no longer hunched like before, and she no longer cowered on the table all day. Because she suddenly realized, one day, she could be like Nian and Zhao Yu, and become the focus of the boys' secret discussions in the class. Didn't you see the boys in the next class, after hearing the story of her comeback, all ran to the door of the class to watch the fun? After all, Nian was still young, so no matter how good-looking she was, her popularity in the class was limited. Li Tangyue was different. She had officially entered the puberty stage, and because she was relatively fat before, after she lost weight, she looked more attractive than Zhao Yu, who was as thin as bamboo. When everyone else was still a little brat whose gender couldn't be distinguished, she had already stepped into the category of a young girl. The spotlight finally shone on her. Those things that he had never dared to hope for had now all become reality. Thus, Li Tangyue began to learn from Zhao Yu. She used the classroom corridor as a runway. Every time she passed by the crowd, her chin was so high. In the past, she was so afraid of being noticed by others. But now, she desperately wanted to be noticed by others. Regarding the various changes in Li Tangyue, Nian was definitely the one who felt it the most. Therefore, while Nian was happy for Li Tangyue, she couldn't help but have a very strange feeling in her heart. Especially on the day of the holidays. After the teacher finished assigning the winter vacation homework and officially announced the start of the holiday, Li Tangyue was the first to stand up. Then, she waved goodbye to Nian with a happy face and said, "Chen Nian, see you next semester." After saying that, she left with the few classmates she had recently befriended. Nian silently looked at Li Tangyue's back as she left. Suddenly, she felt a little disappointed. Because this scene also made her clearly feel that her relationship with Li Tangyue had become more and more distant. Maybe this was human nature? Everyone had their own personality, and the most important reason why two people could become friends was because they had the same goals and were like-minded. It was precisely because of this that Li Tangyue couldn't become Nianyan's good friend in the end. Not in the past. Not now either. Regarding this, although Nianyan felt a little disappointed, she didn't hold a grudge against Li Tangyue because of this. If she didn't want to play with her, then so be it. What's the big deal? Humph. While thinking, Nianyan carried her bag and strode out of the classroom. However, as soon as she walked out of the classroom, she bumped into the two brothers who were rushing over excitedly. Sister. Sister. Grandpa said that we don't have to go back to our hometown this year. We'll stay here with you for the new year. Okay? Although the two brothers were now 3 grades lower than Nianyan. But in their hearts, Nianyan would always be their sister. Therefore, as soon as the two brothers appeared, the two of them began to shout loudly in the corridor. This was the 6th grade's territory. How many lower grade students would dare to come up here? Looking at their reckless behavior and the strange gazes of the classmates around her, Nianyan was stunned for a moment before a bright smile bloomed on her face again. Okay. The last winter vacation of Nianyan's elementary school life began. After careful calculation, she realized that she only had half a year left of her childhood. Perhaps this was the disadvantage of skipping grades. She was clearly less than 10 years old, but under the influence of the surrounding environment, her mind had become a lot more mature. Just like He Miao, who had been forced to grow taller, Nian would only be as innocent and naive as a child her age when she was with the two brothers. She even felt a little silly. Although her childhood was about to end. But the good thing was, this year's winter vacation was not the same as previous years. This was a memorable winter vacation. With the company of the two brothers, the desolation of Shangjing City did not affect Nianyan's mood. Instead, it made her particularly excited. All day long, she was clamoring to find Wenwen and Mingming to play. From the red brick walls of the Forbidden City to the large courtyard of Prince Gong's mansion. From the magnificent atmosphere of the old summer palace to the lively marketplace of Nanluogu Alley. After she pulled the two brothers and played all the famous scenic spots around Shangjing City, the long-awaited New Year's Eve quietly came again, January 24th. New Year's Eve. Early in the morning, the Sai courtyard ushered in the most lively time of the year. Just as Nianyan pulled the two brothers to help put up the Spring Festival couplets, Qin Yongyan also brought Qin Yongwang and his wife back to the Sai courtyard. After a while of greetings, Chen Shi, as the host, arranged the seats in the main hall. Of the 3 elders of the Qin family, Gu Lao's family, other than Qin Ruoying, who was still in seclusion, Qin Shueqing, who was far away in outer space, might not be able to make it back in time. Chen Shi did not ask Gu Lao why he did not return to his hometown this year. In any case, as long as Gu Lao was willing, he would naturally open the door to welcome him. Anyway, the more people there were, the livelier it was, right? Chapter 570. This year was a leap year, so there was one more day in February than in previous years. And because of this, it was destined that this year would be completely different from the previous years. The bustle in the courtyard lasted from New Year's Eve to the first day of the new year. The 3 little guys also felt a different new year in this lively atmosphere. There was no doubt that today's bustle would become an indelible memory of their lives. The weather this year should be good. Although it was not yet February, there was no haze of the past when looking up, and the bright sun seemed to silently announce the arrival of the warm spring. This was the so-called New Year. Looking at the 3 little guys in the courtyard who were gradually growing up, the elders could not help but show a sincere smile on their faces. Thinking about it, it was only during such a special festival like the Spring Festival that everyone could find that long-lost pleasure in the bustling atmosphere, right? In the main hall, the elders of the Qin family and Gu Lao were talking happily. In the courtyard, the 3 little guys were jumping up and down playing. The firecrackers of the first day of the new year were non-stop, and the people of the country seemed to be immersed in this happy atmosphere. Only Chen Shi was standing quietly in a daze outside the west wing at this moment. "Dad, what are you thinking about?" Nian noticed Qin Shi's strange behavior. So, after playing with the two brothers in the courtyard for a while, she came up to Qin Shi while panting, and then used her big eyes to size up Qin Shi. Nothing, I'm waiting for your mom. When she finishes reviewing her homework, we can go out and play with you. Then can I go in and urge mom? Obviously, the little girl was a little impatient. Seeing this, Qin Shi just smiled and pinched her little face, then gently shook his head. No, homework is very important, just like your winter homework. If you don't finish it, mom will be scolded by the teacher. Isn't today the new year? The teacher said that we don't have to do homework during the new year. Qin Shi's explanation obviously did not convince her. Therefore, Nian suddenly pouted with an unhappy face. What homework is so important? The teacher said that we don't have to do homework during the new year. Good girl, mom is an adult, of course adults and children are different. How about this, you guys discuss where you want to go to play later. When mom is done here, dad will take you guys directly, okay? After Qin Shi's patient appeasement, the little girl finally gave up the idea of going to the West Wing to find her mother, and happily discussed the itinerary with the brothers. The clingy little girl finally ran away. Then, the smile on Qin Shi's face suddenly turned serious. He was in a bad mood. It was not because of a certain matter or a certain person, but because he was in a bad mood. Logically speaking, Qin Shi's immortal realm would not have such inexplicable mood swings. But Immortal's impatience, Immortal, this situation was obviously not normal. So, Qin Immortal to Immortal, Immortals including Yingying, who was in seclusion, everything was normal. And this made Qin Shi even more irritable. Out of the intuition of an immortal cultivator, he always felt that something big was going to happen today. But no matter how he looked, he still could not find the source of this uneasiness. This planet, and even the entire solar system, was there a problem that he could not solve? For safety reasons, Qin Shi even specifically sensed the coordinates that he had previously placed on the periphery of the solar system, but he still did not find anything strange. Unless the opponent's cultivation was much higher than his, no one could sneak into the solar system without alarming him. Therefore, Qin Shi could basically conclude that this mysterious factor that could cause his uneasiness should be lurking somewhere on Earth. For immortal cultivators, the sixth sense was not a very mysterious thing. However, this kind of ability that was close to prophecy was still a bit too elusive for Qin Shi, who had just comprehended the first law of heaven and earth. Because prophecy itself involved the law of reincarnation. Although Qin Shi did not even know what the law of reincarnation was now, this did not prevent him from trusting his sixth sense. Therefore, the moment this feeling of uneasiness appeared, he filled the courtyard with restrictions. If it was in the past, after seeing Nian's impatient look, Qin Shi would definitely use illusion to simulate Qin Ruoying's appearance and then take her out to play for a while. But today was different. Judging from the signs of the fluctuation of true essence in the West Wing, Qin Ruoying should be trying to break through to the golden core stage, so he must ensure that Yingying was not disturbed by the outside world. Perhaps, this was the real reason for his faint uneasiness? Thinking of this, Qin Shi simply moved a chair and sat directly outside the door of the West Wing. He had to guard until Yingying safely came out of seclusion. For immortal cultivators, breaking through to the golden core stage was actually not difficult, and there was no danger to their lives. Just like forging iron, repeatedly hammering and condensing the illusory core and the body into one, the formation of the golden core would naturally be successful. However, as the fluctuation of true essence in the West Wing became stronger and stronger, Qin Shi's frown deepened. He felt that something was wrong, but he could not pinpoint what was wrong. But just as Qin Shi was feeling a little uneasy, there was a sudden burst of extremely strong true essence in the West Wing. She broke through. For a moment, not only was Qin Shi happy, but even Qin Yongyan subconsciously turned to look at the West Wing. This scene was somewhat familiar. However, due to the limitations of Qin Shi's restrictions, Qin Ruoying did not cause a phenomenon in the sky like Qin Yongyan did when she broke through. There was no wind. There was no snow. There was no lightning or thunder. Everything was still so calm. In the entire courtyard, only Chen Shi and Qin Yongyan sensed Qin Ruoying's breakthrough. Feeling the gradually calming fluctuation of true essence, Chen Shi's face finally revealed a trace of a smile. He only needed to wait for another half an hour. After Yingying adjusted her breath and adapted to her current state, she should be able to officially come out of seclusion and show herself. Thinking of this, Chen Shi stood up and waved at Nianyan, ready to ask her where she wanted to go later. But at this moment, an unexpected burst of true essence suddenly lifted the roof of the west wing, instantly breaking through the layers of restrictions that Chen Shi had set up. It soared into the sky, straight into the clouds. Then, in front of Nianyan's stunned expression, a navy blue lotus gradually rose from the roof of the west wing. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.